Good evening, Gary Gedall, psychologist, psychotherapist. It's the 30th of June 2025. I'm here in Lausanne, Switzerland, my terrace. There has been an enormous storm today. Everything is soaking wet. I hope nothing is too damaged, but we'll see when things dry out if the things still continue to work. And we'll see how it's going. Today is Monday, the beginning of the week. But it's an unusual week for me. Just a small aside that what we're going to talk about this evening is when it's the right moment to leave. Well, for me, tomorrow morning is the right moment to leave because I'm going to take somebody on holiday. I'm going to be their taxi. And so I'm going to be away for a couple of days. So I don't know if I'll be doing YouTube Live at all tomorrow, Tuesday, or Wednesday. Thursday, I think that should be okay, but we will see. So this morning, administration in the morning, patients in the afternoon, and the storm in the evening. So when is the right moment to leave? So there are obviously various different themes to talk about in this. And the first thing I want to talk about is leaving quickly. Is when you realize, or when someone realizes that you're in a situation that is not appropriate for you or the other partner or both of them. And it could be in a work situation or it could be in a couple situation. So I'm going to start with that. Um, First of all, I'll start with a professional situation in Switzerland, obviously where I live and work, and I've been here for 30 years, so I'm not sure how things work anywhere else in the world. But in Switzerland, if you get a full-time indeterminate contract, which means it's not limited in time, there are limited time contracts, but there are illimited contracts. And when someone signs a contract, they have 3 months of test, 3 months to see how it goes. And those 3 months, it's very, very important because one can find out within those 3 months that either it's really not the right place for you to be, or your employer or the person responsible for you could find that you're not the right sort of person to have. And I admit that in our clinic, we have had situations where we've employed a medical assistant with all good faith that they'll be able to do the job. And what we found out was that they couldn't. And it was very problematical for them. It was problematical. So when you employ someone, if they can't do their job and they really want to do the job and they've been looking for a job for a long time, and they do their best to do what they're supposed to do, and then what they can't do, they sort of hide what they can't do, or they pretend they're doing it, things like that, and things get worse and worse and worse. And so in those situations, if you actually do find out that they are not fitted for the job for whatever reason, we have that 3 months to let them go without any fault. It's not they've not been sacked; they're just not being kept on. And so you just say they weren't considered appropriate for the job, and that's it. There's no black mark or red cross against them, but they just don't keep them. So that's on the professional employment. Now, on the couple level, now I am a couple therapist, family therapist. So one would imagine that I would do everything I can to keep people together, basically at any cost in any way. And it's not true. Because I do make the good or the bad judgment to decide whether I think that a couple should be together. Now, you can say, well, a therapist's job is not to make those reflections or those discussions, or certainly not those judgments, and that is not a good psychologist. Well, I'm a very bad psychologist, just happen to be a rather good therapist. And the reason I'm a good therapist is that I don't do what a psychologist is supposed to do. I do what I think is right, and that usually works. So that's not just ego, that's a lot of experience. That's why I'm talking to you, because if I don't think that's something useful to talk to you about, then I wouldn't be talking to you. I'm a bit stupid. So the first situation I had was a couple that were together very, very short time. And they must have almost immediately decided they need to see a therapist, and I saw them quite quickly. So anyway, this young couple came in. They were very young, I suppose in their 20s. And I said, well, what's happening? He says, Mr. Gedall, I'm afraid that we're having some bad fights. I said, okay, and how long have you been together? And they said, I think 3 weeks, something really stupid, 3, 4, 5 weeks, but it was really, really short. And I said, okay, well, so why are you together? And they looked at each other and go, because we love each other. And I thought, you're having awful rows and you love each other. I said, okay, well, let's investigate a bit. So what do you like to do together? They said, we love each other. And I thought, okay, sex. So that's what they do. They have a huge sexual chemistry. I could see the energy between them. And the problem is when you have the huge sexual energy, is that energy, if it goes where it's supposed to be, to bed, it can work great. And if it doesn't go there, it can cause rows and conflict. So I said, well, okay, well, what do you like to do together in general? And they said, we love each other. And say, what interests do you have? So do you like the same sort of films and TV and sport? We love each other. So, okay. And so what plans do you have for the future? So we'll just let's see how it goes. We love each other. So there was nothing holding them. The only thing that was holding them to was bring them together, hold them together, was this huge, huge sexual attraction. But other than that sexual attraction, especially more than likely after they've had several hours of intense sexual activity, then that was used up and there's nothing there to carry on with until that came back again. And there was just nothing they wanted to do together, nothing. They said, look, you've got nothing to do together. So but we love each other. Yeah, yeah, you have a huge sexual chemistry. And if you come together from time to time to, have sex, that's great for you. But don't imagine you can construct anything as a couple because there's just nothing here. I mean, I did investigate, I did look, I did try, but there was nothing. And so that was it. I just said, look, come together, have a drink together, go to bed together. Don't expect to build anything because it just ain't going to work. So they were a bit confused because not what they expected. And it was like the first session. I just told them once. I thought there's nothing to do with that couple. It's not a couple that's possible. So the second situation, as I said, a couple that have been together a very short length of time that weren't working were quite the opposite. There were a couple, there were two people that had known each other almost all their lives. They'd grown up together not together in the same house, but they're in the same area. They had groups of friends that were all the same friends. Their parents knew each other. They came from good families. They had great education. They're both university students, well, graduates, when I got them, when they came to me. And they moved to Switzerland a few months ago. So I asked them about the history, and what happened is that they'd been around the world together. They'd been around the world together. And I said, well, did you get married beforehand and you decided to go to? He said, no, actually, we decided to go around the world together first. We're just all talking together as a group. And then I said, oh, I'd like to go around the world. And then the other one said, oh, I think I would like to do that as well. And then they sort of like the project built and built and built. And then when they realized they were going to go to certain countries where being two people, I think they had a sexual relationship from time to time. I think it wasn't the fact that there was, but two people that were not married, and to go together into certain countries would create problems. So they decided that would push them. They already had a relationship that was very close. They decided it would push them into getting married, and that way they would go around the world as a married couple and make things much, much easier, shared rooms and the same name and passports and that. So they got married. It was a beautiful marriage, and then loads of friends and the family. Everybody was happy for them because everybody thought it was such a wonderful thing. The problem is that he was a total let it go sort of guy, totally relaxed, daddy cool, everything's going to be fine. He went around the world with a huge backpack, nothing else. And she was totally organized, and things had to be like this, and they had to be like that, and everything had to be planned. A bit like in Harry Potter with Ron and Hermione. She was really Hermione, and he's really a Ron. Good images, actually. And It worked incredibly well, strangely well. It worked. This going around the world, she would plan this, that, the other. She'd plan the hotel, she'd plan the itinerary, she'd make sure everything was perfect, and then it wouldn't work because that's real life. Most of the time it worked and it was cool, it was great. And then sometimes it didn't work. But when it didn't work, he switched on. Oh, we'll do this, we'll sit there, we'll go to this hotel, we'll sort that out. And it would find solutions in the moment. No worries, no stress. And then that made it the most wonderful experience because most of the time he let her do all the organization and just relaxed because he was good at relaxing. And then when necessary, when it didn't work, he'd sort it out. And she could lean on him as this protector and this support and this person that could think in the moment and find solutions. It was great. And then they got offered, one of them got offered a job in Switzerland. The other one quickly found a job also, I said, because they were highly qualified and very good education. So they came, they got themselves an apartment, and all was awful. It was awful because it was okay when you're in a hotel room for a day or two and you leave, one leaves the cases sort of like everything all over the place, the one hangs everything up. It doesn't really matter because it's a couple of days and then you put everything back in the bag and you go away somewhere else. That's fine. But in an apartment where it's fixed in one place and the one that just never tidy up, it's like it's no good, no big deal. And I think they got a cat. Don't ask me why they got the cat. I suppose they are in Switzerland. They think, well, fancy having a cat, so they got a cat. So it just didn't work because he wanted to constantly be out, having a good time, seeing friends and spending money, and she wanted to stay at home and organize things. I've got this creature. This is irritating. I think it's gone somewhere now. And she wanted to start to plan for the future and maybe buy a house and do this. And things just didn't work. Their two ways of functioning was so very different that they were just arguing all the time. And this beautiful fantasy, this beautiful around the world trip was like gone. And all they were, these two people, they just could not get on. So I saw them once, and I saw them the second time, and the second time I said, look, I've been thinking about this quite a bit. I said, I don't think you should be together. They said, but we've only been married like less than a year. We haven't opened all the wedding packages yet. I said, I don't think it's going to work. I mean, my job as a couple therapist is to help people, but I can see that both of you are so different in the way that you function. I mean, you like each other, maybe you love each other, but you obviously can't live together. So they looked at me and as but how can we tell our friends? How can we tell our family? You know, it's like this. They all expect that's going to be this most wonderful couple, and they're all pleased with us, and we keep telling them it's okay. And I said, well, look, you can live a lie, but you're going to hate each other very quickly. And they said, well, actually, we started to hate each other. I said, well, you know, do what you want, but I don't think I can do anything to help you function better as a couple. I just don't see how I can do it. Because sometimes things are not realistic, not from my point of view. And they came back the next time, a few weeks later, and they said, Mr. Gedall, we thought about it and we've discussed it, and we agree we should separate. And eventually we should divorce. And I said, I'm sorry, I can't do anything with that. They know that's fine. I said, it's fine. We've thought about it through. And one took another apartment and they started to live separately. And they became, again, the best of friends. It was beautiful to see. One of them went on holiday, the other one looked after the cat, the other went on holiday, the other one looked after the plants, and they became just the best of friends. And then one of them got an offer to go and work in America, which they couldn't have done if they were in a couple because the other one would have to leave their job, which didn't want to. And so they just agreed to separate like that, and then one flew off to America. And I got a lot of patients from that because they were so pleased with the solution that they would send me patients because I was a great therapist because I split them up. So anyway, so that's the first situation when you find out can find out that very, very quickly things are not working and you just need to accept the fact that it's not going to work and don't go further. Then you have the second situation where you have the honeymoon period where things seem to be okay, and things are quirks or ways of going, and it makes them really interesting, really different. I had this guy that his wife, because he got married, would never close a cupboard door, would leave lights on all the time, sometimes leave the tap running, leave the fridge open. It's like she'd come in and she'd start doing something, then she'd get distracted and she'd just leave. Drawers open, things laying around. I mean, some things she was totally very, very organized with it. She had this top job and very, very organized at work, but at the house, it was just like that. And for the first year or so, it was almost amusing, except when he banged his head on the door. And after a while, it started just not to work. And it wasn't just that, there were other things, obviously, in the couple. And it took time. There was this honeymoon period where everything was okay, and you made things okay because you made this decision. Because obviously, in every relationship, there's pluses and minuses. And you say, well, there's this plus, and there's this plus, and this plus, and unfortunately, this minus, but how does it balance? And often, when you get this new couples, the balance is okay to begin with, and then slowly, it starts to weigh down the things that are negative. And see, we get used to the positive things. The positive things we sort of like, it just that's normal, that's the way things are. And the negative things are not normal, they shouldn't be that way. Just the way we are as human beings. So then you have things, or you have a job. You have a job and it seems okay, and you're there for a few months and it seems fine, and then after a while you start to realize that there are expectations of you. It's like, why don't you stay a bit later, why don't you come in the weekends, why don't you get more work done? And suddenly it's like the pressure starts to go up. Or you've got this boss that's very seducing and says, oh, you could do this job, and oh, this person's off sick, could you cover for them? And then you suddenly find that more and more people expect things of you that you're not comfortable with, or it's too much work, or the hours are more than you expected. And you start to find that the dream job starts slowly to turn into a nightmare, or the dream relationship starts to become uncomfortable. And this, as it takes a bit more time, things become more intricated. I mean, the young couple, they had a cat, and the person that was, one of them kept the cat, the other one was fine with it, and it was okay. But what happens when you start to buy something together, buy a house together, buy a car together? First of all, a car, then a house, and worst, of course, is when you start to have kids. Not that having kids is a bad thing in itself. Sometimes it is, sometimes it isn't. But if you start to have problems with your couple and you start going towards a separation, divorce, and things like that, then you start to how you deal with the kids, how do you tell the kids, and how the kids cope with it. And obviously, it depends on the age of the kids. If the kids are very small, then it's one type of situation. The kids are sort of 8, 10 years old, they can understand and they see things not working. And as they get to be adolescents, then usually they're already very sensitive that things are not working. And strangely enough, when you have a couple that's not working, although the kids would like the couple to stay together and things to improve, deep down, often that they wish that there would be a separation. That's my experience, is that if the couple is in conflict, if the couple is in difficulty, the kids don't want them to stay together for the kids, because it's just everybody's going to suffer. It's just another aside, another small detail. But there are so many other things that get implicated, because even if this young couple, the second one I talked about, when they say their friends and their family expect them to stay together, and it'd be difficult for them to explain that. When you've been together for a number of years, and you have friends that are joint friends, and maybe your in-laws you get on with. I know certain situations where people have divorced, and the in-laws, what are they? What it's called now? The son-in-law, daughter-in-law. I'm sorry, was French. I just get things confused like that. So the son-in-law and daughter-in-law sometimes have such a good relationship with their in-laws that even after divorce, the relationship holds. And if you've got that sort of relationship, it becomes incredibly complicated. How do you deal with that? How does the son or daughter deal with the fact that their ex is still close with their parents? I mean, all sorts of things like that. But you have, especially with, as I say, with friends, or what happens when you have certain work colleagues, or if you work in an industry where you have contacts with other industries, and then you start to leave that industry, and then you still have your network. What do you do with them? The same thing happens with us when we have the psychologists that leave. The psychologists have been there for years. They have their patients, even though technically they're my patients, and then they leave. And at least in Switzerland, I don't know how it is in other countries. In Switzerland, if a therapist leaves, they have total right to take their patients with them because the patients have a total right to choose who they want as a therapist. And so, what happens with a patient that's involved with the clinic and knows the clinic, and then also have the therapist? Do they leave with the therapist, or do they stay with the clinic? It's a bit like the children of divorced parents, and how do you deal with that? So there are, when things have taken a period of time, then it becomes much more complicated to say, well, when do I leave? When is it's too much, too much? So then we get this in between space where people try and make things work. And I've had couples that I've had in therapy for 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 years, when I've been helping them, working with them to try and find compromises and things like that. And unfortunately, even after that length of time, I can say I'm not the best couple therapists in the universe. I can't make everything work. There are times when you just have to accept that for them to stay together, it's not going to happen, because there is something in the behavior of one or both of them that becomes intolerable and unworkable. And although they try to make changes, there's something within the way that they function. It's just not going to change. And so at the end of the day, sometimes it's not feasible. So in those circumstances, then you have to say that the other member of the couple says, okay, am I going to stay in this situation? Because everything has its pluses and negatives. To split up a family, it's emotionally expensive. It's expensive with time and effort, and financially it's often very expensive and problematical. So there's lots and lots of costs of splitting up, and if you leave your job, then obviously again there's lots of costs. So what are you going to do? Are you going to earn a living? How is the company going to survive without you? Yeah, everybody's replaceable, but some people are not as easily replaceable as others. So there are things to take into account. I mean, I've had people that have worked in an industry for many, many years and been unhappy in that industry, and have made many, many efforts to try and organize their professional life in a way that makes more sense to them. And they just have not succeeded in it. And either they have withdrawn on an emotional level, or they just left. And that's that can happen. And we're talking about in this evening about people leaving. And so, in that situation, what is important, of course, that there's guilt. You feel that you've not tried hard enough because you've got your system of values. You've got people that expect that you're going to stay together, and especially obviously if you've got kids, the kids you feel will suffer because of that. As I say, personally, I find the kids suffer less when there's an appropriate separation. And then when you have one member that wants to leave, another one doesn't want that to happen, and there's often feeling of abandonment and anger. And when you get that situation of anger, and one of the members starts to make difficulties for the separation, then everybody's going to suffer. And that makes it very difficult to make that step, to say, if I make that step, I know the other is going to be upset, the other one's going to be angry, and I'm creating a mess and creating problems for everybody. And what I say is that you will need to be careful about your own survival as a human being. because I have had so many patients that have been severely depressed because of work environments or because of family situations where they're just things are going from bad to worse. And if they don't get out quickly, and they don't only have depression, they have people have eating disorders, people that have anxiety problems, um, and they sometimes have bad psychosomatic expressions of things. So people at some point might have to leave, because if they don't, they're going to fall very, very sick, either physically, emotionally, or psychologically. And when it gets to that point, there is no question in my mind that I need to support them in separating at any price, because I need to protect them as human beings. And the fact there's going to be some fallout on the other side, hopefully we can do our best to make it the least painful and least problematical. But in those circumstances, there's no question that I need to help them protect themselves in that situation. Now, I just want to talk about the last situation, is when the couple realize that they are going in different directions, or that they have changed in their values, their life projects. Maybe somebody wants to go and physically move somewhere else, someone wants to transition and change the gender, or experience another form of sexuality. There are, or they are offered a job in another part of the world and the other one doesn't want it. There are many, many situations where a couple can decide that it's time for them to separate. It can also work in professions. We have quite a lot of psychologists that leave because just the structure of psychology in Switzerland now is that the psychology assistants, psychotherapists in training, they can only actually stay in the job as long as they're in training, and when they finish their training, they have to leave. So it's something that has a process that they get to the end, or they need to go to work in a clinic because that's part of their training. And we have a psychologist leaving in a couple of months because she's been offered a job in a clinic which she needs to finish her training. And so there are situations where someone you just have to part. We have to part company. There's no conflict on either side. It's sad on both sides, but it just happens that things are not working that way. Or as I said, that somebody wants to invest in something in their lives, and the partner doesn't want to invest in that, and they just have different life projects, that maybe they had their life projects to begin with dovetailed well together, or maybe they didn't have very strong or very clear life projects at that time, and then they realize later on that there are things within their lives that they just can't still do together, and therefore they need to separate. And that's something that can happen with really in elegance. And I had quite a lot of couples that have chosen, like the first couple, but they've been together for quite a long time, even with having kids. That they've just said it's time that they took some more space, and they organized it, and they found a new balance, and that can happen. So it doesn't have to be conflictual. It doesn't have to be even a failure. People that separate, it's not always because there's been a failure. It's just because the situation has become um, no longer acceptable for them both to share a common project. And they might share different projects. People that have kids, their kids are always going to be a shared project. And that's something that's very important to keep in mind, that even with the separation, they're still co-parents. And so it can work that way. So think for yourself. Are you in a situation, either professional or relationship, family or other, in which it does not feel right for you now? And it might have been felt right to begin with. You might have not realized it wasn't right for you when you fell into that relationship. People that relationships that are complicated to get out of, but they got into it because they hadn't realized what they were getting into. And once they're in, so the clause or like that, then it's more difficult to get out of, and especially people like myself that have changed countries and things like that. Big investment in new relationships. If you suddenly find that a relationship is not what you expect it to be, and you want to move out of it, you say, well, what bridges have I burnt to start that relationship? Flies irritates me all the time. Sorry, it's not very spiritual to kill flies. I'm just trying to get it to go away. Just going on. Bzz, bzz. Uh, so be honest with yourself. Look at the pluses and minuses. See what's important for you. And if you find that you're not in a situation that suits you, obviously you do your best to see you can manipulate, change the situation, find compromises in which you can stay in the structure that you've got. And if not, then just accept that maybe it's the best for everybody. If in a very gentle and respectful way you decide to say, it's time to go. Just like for me, it's time to go. So tomorrow and Wednesday, I'm moving around. So I don't think I'll be able to do a YouTube tomorrow or Wednesday. If I can, I will, but I don't even plan to. I'm not going to make too much stress. It is the last week of the 70-day challenge anyway. Thursday, I think I should be able to see you and do something. I don't know what I'm going to talk about. And then maybe Saturday, I don't know. I really don't know. So everything's up for grabs. Keep an eye on your information to see if I'm live, and I will see you either tomorrow or Wednesday, but definitely on Thursday. So thank you for your attention. Thank you for your time, and I'll see you next time.